or more. Okay, I think we'll get started. I don't want to hold up the folks who joined us on time. So welcome to Getting Back to the New Normal Part 2. My name is Stephanie Hill. I will be one of your hosts today. Joining me also is Renaud Magar, who's President and CEO of DesignMark, NFI, Flexible Pack, and Concierge in Print. So today we're going to talk to Renaud, have a good conversation about his businesses and the idea of the heart and energy of a startup. HP especially values the startup energy. When HP separated in 2015, we started our journey to keep reinventing. Keep reinventing are two words that are very important to our brand. It is a rich and powerful invitation to two distinctly different audiences, our customers and ourselves. And I know that Renaud shares these sentiments. Keep reinventing is our operating system. It reassures and inspires our customers, and it inspires us at HP to take risk and push ourselves. HP has a rich legacy that has shaped who we are today and inspires and guides us. We began in the garage when Bill Hewlett and David Packard founded Hewlett-Packard in 1939. And when they founded our company, they created the rules of the garage, which include believe that you can change the world, work quickly, keep the tools unlocked, work together, share tools, ideas, and trust your colleagues, and the customer defines the job well done. One of the best rules that and most enduring rules that they encapsulated then was believe that together we can do anything. This webinar you will be hearing today is one of a series of webinars put together by our business development group that follows the rules of the garage. We named the new webinar series Together We Can Do Anything. When we talk about the startup culture, we really mean that the rules of the garage is a mindset. It includes the belief in rapid design, build, and test, and a market approach that still permeates our business and extends beyond technology to business model innovation and a workplace culture of innovation. Today, we're going to spend some time talking about those topics with Renaud. This is a key imperative in today's industry, which favors disruptors over manufacturers, still tied heavily to a legacy product-led model. And now I'd like to spend some time introducing you to our special guest, Renaud Magar. We are pleased to welcome Renaud as our featured guest for today's webinar. Renaud has Moreover, Renaud has grown his businesses 300% in a short period of time, and we are fortunate that he's willing to share his strategic insights with us today. Backed by more than 2 decades as an executive in highly complex global businesses, Renaud brings strengths to the company group consisting of DesignMark, Nameplate for Industries, NFI, for Flexible Pack, and Concierge in Print. These skills include the vision and strategies that lead sales and marketing, finance, manufacturing, and supply chain. Renaud has built a sterling reputation as a high-energy leader who inspires high-performing teams. Prior to joining NFI and starting the other companies, Renaud was Vice President, Global Supply Chain at Cabot Corporation, where he was responsible for $1.4 billion in the global supply chain. Before that, at BASF, he managed nearly $400 million in business. And before then, he served as trade manager and Franco-American business development manager at DHL and down here. Renaud holds an MBA from New York University's Leonard Stern School of Business and a bachelor's degree in marketing and management from IDRAC Business School in France. Welcome, Renaud.
Thank you so much for having me.
So today we're going to talk about the new normal and in conversation with Renaud, and we'll begin with a sort of a recap of the new normal from part 1, which I presented to a small group back in the spring of 2020. Before we begin that, I'd like for you to meet my colleagues, Keith and Greg, who are assisting Renaud and I today with the presentation. So Keith, do you want to introduce yourself to our guest?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. I have the pleasure of being the account manager, the HP account manager for Renaud and his group of growing companies. So thank you.
And Greg?
Hi, everyone. I'm Greg McClintock. I'm the solutions architect for the Indigo commercial presses in the northeast of the US, as well as Eastern Canada. And I'm responsible for providing the technical pre and post sales support to the account managers within the region.
Thanks, guys. And I really appreciate both of you helping us today with our conversation. So let's begin with a little recap of the new normal. Part one, which I presented, as I said, back in the spring of 2020. That was really looking at the pandemic as it began and how consumers and businesses reacted to the first reports of infection from China, which were about January. And some of these dates have shifted as we gain more information. And as the pandemic began, consumers reacted with proactive, health-minded buying, began to think about vitamins and immune system boosting products, then moved to reactive health management, pantry preparation, which is when we began to see, outages or shortages of things like hand sanitizer and the infamous TP shortages. And from then we moved into quarantine living preparation, where people were storing shelf-stable goods and preparing for quarantine living. And on to restricted living, and these things happened in different regions at different times as cases exploded in different geographies. And then we moved into late spring and early summer with living the new normal, and really the adaptation and people changing their lifestyles to accommodate mask wearing, sanitary measures and so on. That webinar is available, a recording of that upon request, and it goes into more detail. So where we were then was COVID as content. A lot of emphasis on health, a lot of emphasis on well-being and how to exist within the new normal, so to speak. And where we are now is COVID as context. So, all of us understand what we need to do. And back to school is a good example of that. You'll see commercials that show students in a mix of both remote learning and in-person learning, and the products and services that they need to support where they are in terms of their geographies and their experiences. And that's really what I want to talk about today with Renaud, is that, how do we adapt? How did his businesses adapt? How were they ready for what made them more ready than perhaps some of his other peers to cope with the challenges that were presented by Renaud, by the COVID-19 crisis. So Renaud, thank you again for joining us. And let's begin with a discussion about your customers. How would you describe them, and how would you describe your businesses and the markets you serve?
So thank you, Stephanie, for this introduction first. And, our customers are the most important thing for us. So they are the number one priority. And so we are basically a commercial printer that evolved into a more, specifically digital type of printing over the last few years, and it's thanks to HP in this case, and we have moved into food and beverage, where before we were only servicing basically what commercial printing was doing: nameplates, faceplates, membrane switches, labels, just regular industrial labels, QR code, and then the valuable data came in and that we were able to introduce. So we really moved into a new dimension of flexible packaging for the last couple of years, and that's really what changed us over time. We have a lot of customers still, in the regular activities business that we had over the past 45 years. However, we serve the medical, the industrial, the aerospace, military and government, type of customers. a lot of technology customers, and of course the transportation. So all that, as you see on the left here, is basically the type of labels we do for them, and we moved into a new space, which is really the flexible packaging industry that has driven us, into a new type of business, which is great.
Yeah, and Renaud, I think you saw flexible packaging as an opportunity for your business based on your background and having come from Europe. Is that correct?
That's correct. So my travel around the world have, basically allowed me to understand better the different culture around, the packaging. And that was always disturbing to me to see that in the US, we were always still in the box type of packaging and not much more in the flexible pouches or the shrink sleeves or the type of labels that we use here over there compared to here. So we have done our homework to understand, hey, how much growth this flexible packaging is in the US, and we have basically embarked into that train. That is really changing right now the way we live in the US. As an experienced, person going to any store, you can see, how the boxes are transformed or the cartons are transformed into flexible packaging goods.
Thank you. And yeah, we see the examples here that you have shown us in terms of the types of products that you are producing using the equipment that you have, which is mostly a 6800, I think.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah, 6800. That's really working well for us, and developed us into this new type of business. Yes.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I really was intrigued in having you as a guest is that I've heard you speak in other formats, and you emphasized how important the culture of your company is, developing your culture and the startup mentality, and also safety. Can you share some of your thoughts with us about culture and safety?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm a firm believer that we have to put people first. I mean, that's the number one priority. And so putting our people first means that safety is number one. It's part of our values. I created some values for the companies that are very much our DNA. And that's how we function. We function with people who want to have, who can function, can work in this DNA type of company. And so we have safety, one of the major one, because if you drive safety, and we have been, absolutely we have been very successful with, very strict measures to be able to be safe. We are, basically 3 years without an incident at NFI, for example. Just, an example where people are thinking before doing and not, taking risk. And all those, I would say, this culture or this mindset that we have been able to develop is really helping us to drive, I would say, the procedures and being precise in what we do. And that's really what drives the economics behind the success that we had, is because people are able to focus on the right activities and not be distracted by some other things that may endanger themselves. So really part of the thing is driving culture also at home. I've been really, really vocal with all my employees on making sure that it doesn't stop at work. It's also at home. And the best reward is when people come back from the weekend and say, you know what, I was on the roof of my house and I just thought about you because I was not safe, and I went down and I went to get a rope and attach myself. So just those kind of things like that, or mowing my lawn and in flip-flops, I mean, you never do that. And so all those things that we've been driving at work is also coming into their lives and the lives of their loved ones. So really, really an important part. The people are number one, and it's really how we are, our culture has really developed over time.
Yeah, and the other thing that you had mentioned to me when we were talking in preparation about this was, how you have created your CRM systems, and you had already automated some of your processes so that when the pandemic hit, you were able to transition very quickly to remote work. It wasn't about reinventing how you worked. It was a continuation of how you worked and a collaboration. So can you share a little bit about how this has contributed to your success?
Sure, absolutely. This is something that I'm keen on, is trying to be, because I've been working somehow remotely for the past 20 years, between plane rides and drives around the world. I've learned to work remotely, so it's something to me that is pretty normal. And then when I came to to buying these companies, it's really something that I wanted to develop over time. So we have basically invested quite some large amounts in IT services to really modernize the companies, so anybody can work from anywhere at any time. And so that provided a lot of flexibility around the COVID-19 issues, especially at the beginning in March, when we didn't know what to do, and we had absolutely no indications of the length or the importance of this pandemic. It was really critical for us to be able to save, again, employees first, to save them for not having to come to the office, and still be able to collaborate and communicate with the customers remotely from their home. We had a bunch of laptops that we bought over the years, and making HP laptops, by the way, that we bought over the years, and so they just work from home. We adjusted very quickly because we were prepared, and all our ERP, CRM is on the cloud, and we'll talk about that probably later, but it's something that is really critical.
Yeah, so the technology was in place when you began the transition back in the spring. And here's another example that I know you can talk about, because you were an early adopter of some of the technologies. You've gone through some changes, some product development changes with HP. So can you tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here on screen?
Yeah, sure. So the idea is that we wanted to have the technology allowing the customers to have an experience, and so it's this one is very private, because we have a winery in France, and so for our wine labels we developed this invisible watermark with thanks to the HP technology, and this invisible watermark has allowed to our customers to experience our wine while they are drinking it, but also authenticate the wine, making sure that this is the real deal, not a fake one with a label that has been printed somewhere in the black market. And also, of course, people have to educate themselves, and the issue with the QR code here is that yes, it's very practical, but it's ugly. And so on a label, it's important to distinguish ourselves from when you buy a wine, you don't want to see this ugly QR code on the bottle. So having the ability to put that through an invisible watermark and provide this experience and promote the wine through that experience is really what really drove me to think outside of the box here, and kind of rethink about how we propose our wines to the customers, and how we educate our customers drinking this wine. So just a perfect example here. And they love it.
Yeah. So I know also that you have adapted this kind of technology to use with some of your customers. The vineyard belongs to your family, but I know that there is an example recently where you used it in the COVID context with, I think, IV medical devices and delivering drugs without touch. Can you go into, we don't have a screenshot of that, but can you please maybe
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So the idea is like, you basically can deliver the information through a touch screen that, or touchpad that, basically is at the hospital. So for the employees in the hospital to be able to understand the technology of the equipment without having to find, the information about how to use the equipment is really critical, and especially during the COVID time, where, a lot of respirators were coming in fast and furious, and they didn't know how to use those respirators correctly. You could just scan your phone at the hospital, and it will give you all the information on how to use those respirators. So we have done some work there, printing basically faceplates that goes on top of equipment, and where the nurse interact with the equipment and was able to basically learn on the go how to use those equipments very quickly, rather than having to go through a regular, manual that you have to, okay, how do I do that? It was really well thought out and well developed over time, and that's how the future is. The future is going to be digital, where people are going to interact with their phone in their hand with the product that they have to use. Whatever it's a bottle of wine, or whatever it's a medical device, or it's a pair of shoes, like we see right now on the video, it's just the same. It's very important to know where it's coming from, know how it's used, and understand how to use it, and that's clear to me. That's the future.
Yeah, so this is an example of the HP technology and how it has evolved with some of our partners. So we just recently partnered with Everything, and that is taking over where HP Reveal left off. And Renault was one of our early adopters and grew to use this. And I think you also have been using this type of technology to help your customers to manage inventory. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about the problem solving and how you approach the conversation with your customers? I think you mentioned that you work with engineers, for instance, in developing some of these solutions. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That's correct. That's correct. Most of the customers have a problem to solve, right? And that's how the approach is about. It's about, okay, I'm not here to sell you a label. That's the list of the things that I want to do. The most important I want to do is to solve a problem that you have. So it's what we call a solution-driven approach, where we listen to the customers, we carefully analyze, their answers and what they are looking for, and then we create a solution for them. And most of the time, these solution-driven applications are really made for the customer success. And so we have done a lot of work to educate our sales team to carefully listen, understand what the problem is, and then solve it through our technology. So whatever it is, an invisible watermark, or whatever it is, an RFID tag, or something else, we can deliver those solutions because we have the experience and the knowledge on those technologies. So again, part of the things in terms of supply chain, I've done so many years of supply chain, understanding what the product is, where the product is going, when it's going to be delivered, at what price, and know all this information. We live in a data-driven world. It has to be, big data is the future, and we have to be able to understand, channel this data, and move them into the customer use. And so our technologies and your technology with HP technology allows us to move those things into our customers for better success for them.
Thank you. Yeah, and yeah, it's really fascinating because you've adopted so many different technologies in addition to the print and the actual press configurations. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the cloud, because the cloud has been a challenge for many of us. Can you share how and when you are using cloud services, and how the cloud enabled your businesses to pivot when the restricted living mandates emerged during the spring?
So the cloud is a kind of a strange world when you think about it, because
I know.
We don't live in the cloud, but we live in the cloud, right? The importance for us of flexibility, ability to retrieve data, being able to not be dependent from hardware, but just in being able to access data instantly, was really critical. And what drove me to think about the cloud was a long time ago, about 5 years ago, when I bought those companies. They didn't do anything on the cloud. Everything was server-based, and locally server-based here in the plants. And I looked at it. I'm like, okay, what happens if you lose power? What happens, if you have a flood? What happens if you have a hurricane? And what happens about snow? We have snow here, right? So we went into a 5-year program where everything was moved to the cloud. And so we basically are 98% moved into the cloud. We just have a few things still to move in the cloud, and we live in the cloud. So per se, where all of us can access from our iPhones, from our laptops, from anywhere in the world, wherever, you know, I'm going to France for on vacation, or, you know, some employees goes to other countries, they can have access to our information. And that's really what it is. It's all about information available at your fingertips. And I'm a firm believer that our CRM, our ERPs are all based on cloud-based, and they are the solution for the future. Because why take the risk in this environment right now to be dependable on hardware, where, you know, we have those solutions are really, really helpful. So we really moved our, you know, and the COVID-19 is a perfect example. We were ready. We were like absolutely ready for it, and we didn't have to do too much movements, just reorganization in terms of who does what, where, but that was it, and it was pretty much, you know, a done deal for us.
Yeah, it wasn't a pivot. It was, you were ready. You had seen the future, so
well, it's part of this collaboration. How do I collaborate and still be from far away, right? And that's what we are trying to do with our customers right now, is trying to collaborate from far away as well with them, because we cannot visit them, or it's pretty much restricted. And I have to say, we have been very little impacted by it, because we were ready for it. We were doing it already before the COVID.
Yeah, I found that fascinating. So one of the things that I noticed as I began to do research in preparing for our chat today was a study by the MIT Sloan School of Management, and they talked about companies who show agility and resilience and are going to be able to respond to all of the challenges that are happening, including the pandemic, but just technology and change and just the way the world is moving at this point. And Renaud, it really resonated with me because it sounds like your company. So, you know, the four things that they said were prioritizing people, which I know that you do, make megatrends matter, which is following you know, the happenings in the environment that are current,
right.
Building resilience, which you have done with your ERP tools and working in the cloud, and then championing multi-stakeholder capitalism. And you said, you made a comment about this and how you had learned this sort of concept of what's behind it in your previous life at, I think, BSAF. So
BSAF,
talk a little bit about you know, your background and, you know, how your leadership style and your strategic thinking has developed.
Yeah, it's basically you know, the multi-stakeholder capitalism, what is called in the MIT research here, is really what I call you know, working with what I call co-producers. You know, people who are doing the same thing that I do somewhere else, and being able to develop a partnership and a relationship with them. Because, you know, at the end of the day, we are not competitors. We help each other's. And that's how I see, you know, the network of, you know, the different printers around the country and around the world, in fact. And I see them as a network. And that's how much I loved about the HP network, is that we can rely on each other to print some things, you know, from the other side of the world to a customer that we have, and help each other. So to me, the multi-stakeholder capitalism is really about working together for success for our customers. And if we are making them successful, the customers will work with us and will work with our partners. And that's how I see the future being even more developed around these shared type of assets that we can utilize around the world, and not being there and not being owned by us, but by somebody else. So think about, you know, Uber. Uber is a perfect example where you share your car with strangers that you have never seen before and you'll never see again, right? So it's another way of, you know, doing that. And Uberization of and sharing assets is really kind of the culture that, you know, we are going into. And you see that everywhere. And if people don't embrace that, it's to their loss, because I really think that working together for the better goods of our businesses is really what's going to make us successful.
Yeah, we see that in our own world, and you mentioned it briefly in terms of solutions like SiteFlow that allow you to utilize equipment that's not on your floor to produce jobs and quickly scale when needed.
Yes.
OS is another example. So we have the infrastructure, as you nicely mentioned, to support that sort of multi-stakeholder capitalism that MIT was talking about.
Yeah.
One more point about the cloud is that cloud print management platforms will emerge as hybrid and edge as a single platform. And 75% of organizations expect to increase the use of cloud print management by 2025. And that can mean anything. That can mean SiteFlow or PrintOS. There are many platforms, as you mentioned too, and that are supported in the cloud for CRM and ERP solutions. Everything. There are a lot of solutions, and if anyone wants to hear more about that, we'll give you the information at the end of the webinar. So hold on with us.
Yeah, it's even surprising, in fact, to me that it's only 73% who are thinking about it. It should be 99% of us thinking that way.
That's the projection. We'll see what happens as people are pushed. So before we begin to discuss solutions, I'd like to get some input from our audience. And so, Greg, can you launch the first poll? I'd like to know how many of the types of solutions listeners have tried in the last 6 months. So cloud services, web to print, workflow solutions. So it seems like people are voting here. We'll wait. Interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely, the future is really, really clear to me in terms of using those services for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll give it another couple of seconds and then we'll close the poll. It's very interesting to see how people have moved in the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so it looks like we have a tie with going out to new customers and web to print. So thank you very much. So let's talk a little bit with Renaud about your solutions. We know that you have a full array of solutions. What stands out to you now, and how do you see it changing in the future?
So I really think that the interactions with tools is really critical. I think the more I talk to customers, the more we have these exchanges with customers. I really think that the interaction with digital tools are really going to be critical for the future. So making sure that we continue to innovate from that standpoint, make sure that we can interact between your phone basically and the end product is really critical. And part of those things is accessibility and transparency of data throughout the whole supply chain. You have to have this transparency available, and that's what's is part of the mega trends we are talking about is the big data, right? Having able to use those big data to derive some conclusions and move on into new spaces. That's really what's going to change our world as well over the next I would say years, a couple of years from now. And the technology has to be there. You have to really invest in technology heavily.
Thank you. And then moving on as we wind down, I wanted to hear your thoughts about cohesion. And I use these one-word slides because I really would like for this to be a conversation. So if anyone has any questions, please put them in the Q&A or chat. But you seem like you have a cohesive strategy and thoughtfulness in the way that you run your business. And so I'd like to hear a little bit about that before we close.
Sure. So the cohesion is really important here, and again, back to the prioritization of our people. I really think that you have to prioritize your people. And in the last few months, you have been able to see how much solidarity we get, between amongst ourselves. Solidarity is really important. We count on each other, and and what I do is I really empower my employees to make decisions. They don't need me to approve the decisions. They move and make those decisions, because an employee who is empowered is 10 times more productive than an employee who is just doing a task. And to me, it's really, really critical that in terms of cohesions, to bring that cohesion together and allow us to innovate, doing more collaborations and more, and with intensity, is really what's going to drive us to success. And the cohesion is all about the people. We are people. We are not machines. And once you understand that, and once you give the power to them to really do things differently and bring innovations to us, because you cannot think as a single person. You have to think as a group. And we are much stronger as a group than individuals, right? So really pushing that cohesion to the, driving with technology is really going to drive effectiveness and transformation.
Yeah, and I want to stress again that, Renaud, I have so much respect for you because you've grown your businesses 300%, but you also have really stressed culture and some of these other, sort of soft skills in a manufacturing environment, and that really, from my perspective, has made a big difference in just observing what you've been able to do with your business. So with that, I would like to give you the opportunity to talk about your companies. The illustration that we have shown here is, I believe, a hotel safety tag to show that the room has been sanitized,
Yep.
which is again, something new and that
Yep.
didn't exist, a year ago, but is in response to current conditions. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your companies and the startups that you have created?
Sure. So NFI Corporation, so Nameplates for Industry, is a 45 years old company and very well known in the Northeast for just faceplates, nameplates, membrane switches, and those labels that plastic labels that we have been making. But it was a company that was doing very well and still doing very well. But it's still with working with a lot of niche type of customers who are developing new products with us. And just like DesignMark, the same type of company, we are very close to the two companies are very close to each other. And they are very much into the normal faceplate, nameplates, and membrane switches business, and labels and variable data as well. We moved into those startups, Flexible Pack and Concierge in Print, because that's where I saw the need in the US coming in. And Flexible Pack is really one of the, I would say, most successful one, because it's really touching food and beverage industry. We have been very successful in this area, but also snacks and all those things that the 6800 provides, in terms of products. And we've been able to develop some new products for some customers who were really looking at new ways to manage it. So we do shrink sleeves also. We do a lot of activities in terms of pouches. So again, very, very successful one. And we launched a Concierge in Print right during the COVID time. So it was, timing-wise, it was not the best, but we have been able to come up with some innovative, as you see on the picture here, innovative ways to serve the hospitality industry with new type of labels to make sure that things are sanitized, rooms are sanitized, or cars are sanitized for the rental cars. And we came up also with some shields that we have, also cut ourselves and print, on it as well. So we sell them on Amazon as well. And so the face shields were absolutely not something we were doing before. But again, emergencies creates innovation, and we have been able to develop that over time. So it's really a kind of a fun development, and we are now moving into a much more hospitality type of business and developing that as well. So all those four companies are very different from each other, but they are very complementary as well.
Thank you, Renaud. So I wanted to, we're getting to the close of our session, and I really thank you. Do you have any final thoughts that you wanted to share with us about, how you've been able to achieve that 300%, what the culture has contributed to that? We usually talk in these webinars very much about our technology and not so much about culture and how business is conducted. So I'd like to give you the opportunity to present your final thoughts here on that.
Sure, sure. So I really think that I love your tagline, keep reinventing. And that's what it is about. You know, I keep reinventing myself every single day. And what I want, you know, to hear from the people who are working with me is to, you know, to see them also reinventing themselves, because that's how we're going to all to evolve through a cohesive mindset into new ventures, just like we did for the last few months, you know, in Concierge in Print or in the flexible pack area. We are keeping reinventing ourselves. So we have a lot of assets, we can do a lot of things, but we have new markets that are changing, and you have to capture the growth of these markets, and you have to be able to attract people into those markets. So you know, we can all serve it very successfully. And I think education is number one. Education is really a number one priority. If we educate our customers and if we educate ourselves to get further every day, we are really, you know, able to reinvent ourselves and thinking about the products differently. So I reward innovation deeply, because I really think that innovation is driving growth, and of course our service and quality is you know, is super important. But you know, with producing that safely, that's all we need. I think it's really what it is about. The success comes from working hard and thinking outside of the box.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate your time today. What I wanted to do to wrap up from the HP perspective is to thank our audience for joining us. To let you know that if you have any questions or you want to request information about future webinars, if you'd like more information about Renault, our guest today, please send your inquiries to togetherwecandoanything@hp.com. And with that, I thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Renaud.
Bye, Stephanie.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Renaud.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Greg.
Take care. Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.